Hello everyone. Looking at power of blessing, and we're looking at the power of blessing and how God blesses us and wants to bless us, and that's what I want to just talk about today. How God wants to bless us, and I love Jabez's prayer. You know, it's a blessing mentality. Oh Lord, that you bless me. He wants to reverse the curse. He brings him into blessing, reverses the curse of pain in his life. He says, oh, that you'd bless me, that your hand would be with me, that you'd enlarge my territory, that your hand would be with me, that you'd keep me from evil. And then it goes on at the end, it says that I may not cause pain, that might be a blessing to those around me. But then he goes on to say that God granted him that request. I want you to know something about God. The same God that granted Jabez's request wants to grant your request. He wants to do something in your life, which is absolutely amazing. He really does. And he's a God of blessing, and he wants to bless you. And he grants our requests. And you know, in the book of John, if you look in John's Gospel, it talks about him being the vine, we are the branches. And in that power, in that beautiful portion of scripture in John chapter 15, he talks about that when you pray, you'll pray to the Father in my name, and whatever you ask, you will be given. And then he says that your joy may be complete, may be full. I find that amazing. And he talks about how it glorifies the Father when God answers our prayers. And I want you to know something, that God is interested in your joy. Okay, God is interested in your life. He's interested in your life. He's interested in your joy. He's interested in doing something amazing in your life and granting your request, so that Father may be glorified when your requests are answered, also that your joy may be full, that you may enter into the joy of knowing God and knowing answered prayer. God wants your prayers to be answered. He's a God who answers prayer. He granted Jabez the request that he petitioned him for when he cried out to the God of Israel. When you cry out, God will grant your request. Why? Because he's a blesser. Just because he wants you to pray and he wants you to trust him. And when you pray and trust him, he wants to give you the answers of what you pray for. Now look at this beautiful psalm, Psalm 37. I want to read one verse, packed full of power today as we close this time of speaking about blessing, of hopefully bringing revelation, getting revelation, holding on to the fact that God wants to bless us spiritually, mentally, physically, every area of our lives. And listen to this. It says this in Psalm 37 verse 4, delight yourself in the Lord and he will give you, listen to this, the desires of your heart. Another version says the petitions of your heart, the desires, requests of your heart. I want you to know something. God delights in you. Okay? God wants your joy to be full. He wants you to receive the answers to your prayers. He wants you to have faith, to put your trust in this God who loves you so much, who wants to bless you more than you can ever imagine. He wants to bless you. And this is what he says. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he shall give you the desires of your heart. In other words, those desires in your heart, you know, are there because God has put them there. The prerequisite to that is that we delight ourselves in the Lord. That means that we delight in our Christianity, delight in our God. I want to tell you, it's a delight to know God. It's not hard, it's not burdensome. I speak to some Christians, it's like, oh, it's hard, it's Christian life, it's hard. Yeah, and there's times, there's periods where it's tough, you know, you got to stand for some things. So you're not going the like way of everyone else, you're standing for God, you're moving in God. So that can go against the flow sometimes, that can go against ourselves sometimes, our flesh sometimes. And so that's maybe the hard part of it. But I want to tell you, God wants you to delight in him. When you delight in God, listen to what happens. You'll just go his way. You'll just want to do his will. And when you delight in God, he wants to give you the desires of your heart. Why? Because in delighting in him, your desires become his desires. Let me say that again. In delighting in your salvation, in delighting in who God is, your Father, in your new identity with him being your Father, when you delight in him, He delights in you, and he wants to give you the desires of your heart. Why? Because your heart, your desires become his desires. Your desires of your heart, when you delight in God, when you trust God, when you walk with God, when you live in the blessing of God, okay, here's what he wants to do. He wants to give you the desires of your heart. Those desires that in your heart, those petitions, those requests that you have deep down in your heart, God wants to give you them. He's not holding out on you. He wants to give you. Here's what he wants you to do. Just delight in him. Just rejoice. Just enjoy God. Okay. So many people are living in stress, living in fear. Okay. The enemy puts fear in your life. Living in lack, living in worry, living in all these things, stress, anxiety.